What's up, guys? CJ here, and welcome back to another all-new episode of Hybrid TV, where we break down all the big things going down on your small screen. I'm joined, as always, by Tim.
Yeah, how's it going, everyone?
And Will.
What's poppin', people?
HBO. What are they going to do? Speaking of moving on, what are they going to do when they're moving on from Game of Thrones? Well, we know one part of that puzzle, of course, is Westworld coming back this year. Another big part of that puzzle is going to be their Watchmen series, their next planned prestige, high-profile drama project, which, of course, is going to adapt the legendary graphic novel. Potentially, we don't know exactly what they're going to bring to the table in terms of that series. Damon Lindelof, who of course is showrunning, has already said it's going to be a loose adaptation. Brace yourselves. So we don't exactly know what they're doing. There's a lot of speculation that it could be a prequel series following the original Minutemen, and then it'll eventually follow up with potentially each series would be an anthology. There's a lot of rumors about, we have no details, but for better or for worse, despite the lack of details, it seems like, I don't want to say they're putting the rush order on this, but it seems like this is developing fairly quickly, because Lindelof started writing this thing back in like October, and they've already found a director to direct the pilot for HBO. It's one of those things where I don't want to ask the same question for two segments, but does it seem like they're rushing this at all to maybe potentially try and have this like on the table for maybe like I don't want to say 2020, but maybe like right after Game of Thrones ends? It's like, hey, we got this next.
I agree with you kind of on that idea. I don't know if it's like rushing per se, but they do seem to be advancing at a surprisingly quick pace.
Yeah.
Like, even for like Black Lightning, the announcement and turnaround for that was pretty long. And it's seeming like, all right, we got a director, then we'll get a script. And by the time Game of Thrones comes out and finishes in like the summer, I can see us getting a teaser by like that winter and shooting for 2020. Like, I think it might be that turn, because they want to keep the numbers up. Because,
what's funny is
cable is dying.
As the words were like coming out of my mouth, it's 2020 is actually like, if it came out in like, let's say April of 2020, if it took that spot that Game of Thrones usually occupies, which is like spring, spring through middle of summer, which usually that was its thing, it was like spring through middle, Sundays from like March or April until like June was its usual like niche. If it takes that spot from, for HBO, taking over, for Game of Thrones, in 2020, I think that's reasonable. I think that's, because they've got all of this year, for Lindelof to finish writing it and get the pilot episode filmed, and you basically got all of 2019 to film it. So it's like, it's honestly, that would be fine. It doesn't seem like with the fact that like how production is accelerating, it kind of makes it seem like this is not necessarily going to like fill Game of Thrones spot like a lot of people had expected. I would, at this rate, at this pace, I would expect that we maybe would see this before the end of 2019.
I think they want that same type of hype that Game of Thrones kind of developed, because this is another one that's based off an existing property that has a pretty sizable and vocal fan base.
It's going to be interesting.
I guess it doesn't seem that quick to me. Like, it's quicker than normal, but it depends on how far along they are in the scripting process with it. If they have more than the pilot done in terms of scripting, then casting a director now makes sense.
I would assume that the pilot is done. Like, the script for the pilot is done.
Yeah.
So long as that's fine, I think that it's moving at a fine enough pace. I don't think it's going that fast, especially since even with the director, we don't know how long until they start production or how long it's going to be until it goes to air.
And it's really interesting. Speaking of that director, it's funny that we haven't mentioned it, but, mentioned the director by name. That is going to be Nicole Castle.
I think it's Cassell.
Nicole Cassell. I'm just looking
Casselius.
You can never tell. But Nicole Cassell, who actually previously worked with Damon Lindelof on The Leftovers. She directed 2 episodes, both which were critically well received. And the big connection there is that Damon Lindelof was the showrunner for The Leftovers as well. So that's a pretty nice connection there. And clearly they're trying to lead with their best foot, because she, leading with a really very well, critically, acclaimed director. directing this pilot. I mean, it's a good sign. I think it's one of those things where I'm excited for this show. And it's one of those, it's almost like Schrodinger's paradox, isn't it? It's like, I'm excited for this
Watchmen.
show. Exactly. Speaking of, that's a huge thing for Dr. Manhattan. I mean, no pun intended. It's Schrodinger's paradox, my excitement for the show, because I feel like I'm a huge fan of the graphic novel. I actually didn't hate the Zack Snyder movie, but it's one of those things where I'm kind of looking at it and I'm like, I'm really excited for this show. But I feel like as soon as they put it in a box, as soon as they put the show in a box, which ironically is, I guess, the reverse Schrodinger. As soon as they take it out of the, ethereal realm of ideas and put it in a box by, specifically classifying what it's going to be, there's a really good chance that my excitement is going to be diminished greatly. But as soon as they, classify it, I'm hyped as hell. But chances are, knowing me, I'm probably going to be excited either way. Any final thoughts before we move on to our comic book television segment?
I guess it's good to hear more about this show, because we haven't gotten a huge amount of news on it.
We'll see. I mean, the Deadline article refers to Lindelof scripting the pilot in the past tense, like he's already done.
Yeah.
So it's I would assume that he's done with the script. We probably will be hearing some casting stuff soon, and as soon as we start hearing casting stuff, we'll know more about what the project is going to entail. So keep posted. We'll be covering the updates here on Hybrid TV.